Hey, welcome back to Garbro's Field Desk. I have for you Chapter 7 of the Book 1 Mk.II redo. Now, some of you have asked, and yes, I am tired. It is a tiring thing doing all this, narrating and writing and managing the VAs and keeping the stories going, writing every day, managing the game books, but that's why I'm here. I'm gonna be tired, but I know what I'm doing. I know the length of energy it takes to do what I do, but I do it for you. And I do it to take you on a journey, on an adventure, take you somewhere else for just a little while. And no matter how tired that may make me, to me it's always worth it. So don't worry about me. I'll always be here for as long as I can, giving you the stories you like. So, Chapter 7. Let's get to it. Chapter 7. Percussive Interrogation. The rain never stopped thundering down the entire way back to the city of Immelnoris, soaking those who were on horseback and deafening those who rode inside the trucks. To ease the burden on the horses, the wagons were hitched to the HMMVs and dragged behind them, allowing them to walk freely. The curious thing about the Valley of Horses was their innate intelligence, and were more than happy to trot behind the towed wagons without any handlers or ropes to guide them. Yule and 10 of his dragoons arrived before the rest, having ridden ahead with their captive strapped to one of their saddles, while the rest of the dragoons escorted the trucks back to the city. Due to the importance of the ambush, Yule pushed his troopers hard, avoiding camping and arriving in speed. The horses were not fans, but they were tough, reliable beasts. Chikily landed soon after Yule arrived, fresh from visiting Zerg Company, and was almost besides himself when he laid eyes on the captive woman. He was more than happy to maul and eat the UN soldier since her compatriots had filled him with birdshot, and had to be physically restrained by the dragoons and dragged away before he managed to get his teeth into her. Indeed, the prisoner was not being looked upon favorably, as news of Chikily's findings had gotten around the city quickly. It was a fair assumption that many inhabitants of the city wouldn't mind getting a piece of her, one way or another. As the rain poured on, tenders from the Sparkling Unicorn ran out to assist the humans and their horses, letting the Veil Riders retrieve their waterlogged gear after they dismounted and then taking their mounts back to the stables that were attached to the inn. The prisoner was unhooked as well and shoved harshly forwards towards the door of the inn, her boots splashing awkwardly as the feeling came back to her legs. The German woman craned her neck to look up and gape at the rain-slicked buildings, her steps faltering as she turned and observed the city with open wonder. Chix found herself lacking the patience to let the German woman look around, and her boot checked the woman in the small of her back, sending her flying forwards into the mud and run off of the street with a thudding splash. Chix clicked her tongue as the prisoner coughed from below her and made a show of unshouldering her long HK-417 rifle, pointing the barrel at the woman's face.
Move it, hun.
The woman sputtered, shaking the water from her face and hair as she looked back at the forward element of the dragoons, all of whom glowered down at her while fingering their weapons. Chikily was there as well, still restrained by a firm hand from McCormick, and grinned his massive fangs at her while rumbling in his throat. She winced up at them, wiping the mud and grime from her face on the shoulder of her uniform. Muddy water clung to her hair, making it stick to her cheek and jaw as the rain pelted her. That's enough of that. She already has a rough enough time ahead of her, Yule said, his boots splashing softly on the street as he stepped towards the group, having given his horse an affectionate pat on the rump while the tender led it away. He was in the middle of coaxing his pipe back to life, and it glowed red from under the bill of his hat, casting his face in eerie scarlet as the rebirth smoke trailed in the rain. Take this one inside. She has information we need. Give her water. I don't want her dying before I get what I want out of her. Yule puffed on the stem of his pipe as Chicks and Domino leaned down to grab an arm each, dragging the woman roughly through the mud. Her knees and boot toes dragged, leaving grooves in the soft earthen road before thumping onto the stone sidewalk and then the front door of the inn. Mr. Chikily, do you have a letter for me? Yule asked, turning to look at the harpy as he took another drag from his pipe. Chikily ground his teeth for a minute, eyeing the prisoner hotly as she was dragged away, but snapped out of it and quickly stepped his way over to Yule.
Chikily has letter from Coco.
Yule took the letter from Chikily's hand with an appreciative smile and splashed through the street towards the porch of the inn to read it, Chikily plodding along behind him. The letter was already fairly soaked due to the rain, but he still made way for the cover of the inn porch roof before he opened it. The dragoons that didn't go inside crowded around him to read as well. Cole gave a snort.
Dakota got himself a girlfriend, eh?
Seemed like it. Yule observed with a laugh and continued reading. Coco stated that he could use the trucks they picked up and the ammo, as well as any other extra things they could spare since they didn't have the dwarves in town like Yule did. Yule hummed to himself as he tapped the back of the wet letter with his fingers, then looked over to Chikily, who was rocking back and forth on his long, clawed avian feet. Chikily? Chikily perked up his head and looked up to Yule expectantly. Do me a favor, would you? Could you grab some of the harpies that can carry heavier loads and have them meet me here tomorrow? I would like them to run ammo and food for us, Yule said, as while he did not mind sharing the ammo, he would prefer to keep the HMMVs for himself.
Chikily hears.
Chikily chirruped proudly, and instead of flying, took off at a run down the street, his nails clicking softly on the road. It seemed he had enough of flying through the rain for the day, having met Eris midway from her run to Immelnorris to take the letter back himself. There had been, of course, a scuffle in the air for control of the letter, but Chikily was more determined than Eris and won in the end. Yule watched him go with a smile, his pipe stem clicking in his teeth as he did, before turning back to his Veil Rider dragoons who stood about, thumbs hooked in their riggings or picking at their nails with their knives. Yule's face turned from amused to serious with a smooth transition, and he puffed hotly on his pipe, blowing the heavy, greenish-tinted smoke from his nostrils. He had run out of tobacco from Earth long ago, and had switched to the local varieties out of necessity.
The Kraut? What are we doing with her?
Cole asked, crossing his arms and tipping back his soaked Stetson.
She likely knows all kinds of shit we need to have. Troop count, strength, vehicles, any news from the other side of the Veil?
What memes we've missed.
Someone else piped up, and the serious tone was broken for a moment from the titters of laughter. Yule bared his teeth in thought, and as he spoke, air funneled down the stem to heat the coals in the bowl of his pipe, casting red flecks in his blue eyes. Break her. I want the truth of what's going on, and I want her to know we mean business. And break her. They did. There was a little room in the basement of the Sparkling Unicorn that was normally used for meetings, or for extra storage during festival days. For today, it was an interrogation room, and the walls proved effective at keeping down the noise. Yethis was still with the vehicle convoy that was slowly making their way to Immelnorris, so instead they had Linder, the inn's resident healer, on duty. Those who joined Yule for the interrogation, a mixture of male and female Veil Riders, dropped their wet gear and uniform tops onto the table and chairs nearby, standing in their wet uniform pants and soaked undershirts. Dusky light filled the room as a few lamps had been lit, the flames casting warbling shadows on the stone walls and the woman tied to a chair. Panic once again swam in her eyes as she looked around the gloomy room, her uniform top still covered with the mud of the road and the blood of the other soldiers who had died in the truck. There were no questions or reverence to begin with, no speeches or admonishing to be found, only pain. The Veil Riders just worked the woman over, warming her up for the questions that were soon to come. Yule, however, told the men to stand back, just letting the female Veil Riders take the prisoner to task. The anger that flowed out of the Veil Riders came from well-cemented American personal prejudices. It was no secret that many Americans did not look favorably on the UN, and the recent events had only served to stoke those flames. Closed fists and palms cracked her jaw, worked teeth loose from her mouth, and broke her nose. When the Veil Riders got bored of her face, they moved down to her ribs, punching at sensitive tissue and knocking ribs out of place. Her head would have been a ruin if it wasn't for Linder, who clicked his tongue and healed her face back to perfection every time it was needed, just for the next female Veil Rider to ruin it. By the third time, she was forced to regrow her canines back into place. Desperation was starting to settle into the woman's mind. The cycle continued until she finally sputtered out in accented English, daring to hope they would stop if she managed to get a sentence out while they were switching out her attackers.
What? What do you want?
The Veil Riders looked back at Yule, who sat in a chair a few feet away, facing the prisoner and watching quietly. He turned to look at his female riders standing around like tavern brawlers as they panted or rubbed their knuckles angrily, some drinking from large flagons or smoking the local cigars made from mug root. "She speaks at last," Yule said, puffing out a little cloud of smoke from his pipe while raising his tankard to his mouth. "I thought you would have tried that a long time ago and were just playing hard to get. Did you think of something interesting to tell me?" She sputtered and looked around in a panic.
Something to tell you? But you haven't.
Yule flicked his fingers at the female Veil Rider that was currently on tenderizing duty, watching the German woman over the rim of his tankard. The Veil Rider backhanded her knuckles across the prisoner's jaw so hard that an incisor rattled off the wall nearby. Yule then looked down at the orders in his hand, rereading them as he tapped his fingers on the thigh of the nearest male rider, sending him in to do some work. The reports told him far more than he would have liked, turning the pages over one by one. The officer had been put in charge of generating false flag attacks on the locals, and it explained why there were American uniforms and milsurp costumes in one of the ammo cans his men had found some time before while doing inventory on their loot. According to the reports and orders, the officer was to use a few selected individuals from the long-dead convoy and do their best to make Yule and Coco's men look like terrorists, recording the attacks and then reporting back to the Veil. These attacks were to be vicious and horrifying, enough to shock even Americans into turning flag on Yule's forces. They even used the word slaughter multiple times in the report, as if to make their point. In addition, the other members of the team were to exercise seek and destroy missions on the renegade humans as well, thinking they were safe in using their vehicles as a spearhead to hunt them down. What Yule didn't know or understand was, to what end? The male Veil Rider worked the woman over quickly, and he was brutal in his strikes, breaking bones and bruising organs with deft attacks. Linder was putting her back together each time with a bemused look on his face, until Yule finally cleared his throat, stopping the vicious attack short. The woman was panting and crying out, her boots scrabbling on the wooden floorboards as she writhed. She was completely intact, but the mental trauma was definitely doing its job. The memory of the pain stayed fresh in her brain, as it was only the physical damage that was being whisked away, her nerves shooting hot with torment. Smoke obscured Yule's face as he spoke, his voice a threatening rumble. Why are you here? How did you come to be on American soil? She moaned as she struggled to keep her eyes open, her entire body squirming in anguish. A Veil Rider stepped up, cocking back an elbow, but Yule held up his hand. That's enough. Why are you traveling through American soil, Rhineling? There is no way a European combat force would ever be allowed to borrow American military hardware and travel freely like you all have in the Midwest. Yule said, turning another page of the report over to reread the backside. What allowed you to come here and do your dealings? She panted once, twice, then mewled out an answer.
Deals. They say deals on the inside. We were just supposed to come through and put on a show.
The rumble of thunder outside vibrated down the stone walls of the basement, further dampening her cries and quiet gasps of pain. Smoke hung in the air in ghostly strings, no breeze to carry it away, and Yule clenched his tankard, the flesh groaning on the metal as he did. What deals?
There was a change of power in American government. Your president was impeached and the other party quickly gained control. The Veil was changed to a world effort, and we were invited to go through and hunt down American defectors. They didn't trust other Americans to do it without defecting themselves.
She panted, squinting her eye out of reflex as the body believed that it should be blackened, despite having no damage to it.
You have all been labeled terrorists for killing the first team that came in. Americans are angry at us being there, and Command wanted to make all of you fit the bill, to be easier to hate. You're being used to galvanize the revolution, and they want to head it off.
Horse shit,
murmured Cole.
It can't happen that easily. That would require everyone to work together.
Chicks shook her head, whispering over to a man beside her.
That can't be true. How can our entire government flip so quickly?
Yule glared at them, then back to the woman tied to the chair. Democrats are in control of the White House now. There's no way that shit would have passed regardless of the party in control. There are too many systems of checks and balances, and the American people would never go for it. The woman lurched forward, tears streaking down her face, her voice nearly lamenting as she begged those around her.
I don't know how it all works. I don't know, I swear. All I know is deals were made or bribery may have happened. I don't know. It's all rumors. All I know is your Midwest is almost in rebellion as it is. And now Russia is pressuring the other European nations for a bigger cut. We're here to control the roads, make a pipeline for getting resources back to the other side, and damage the image of the Veil Raiders to dissuade rebellion.
She panted, looking around for any kind or merciful eye, but she found none in the room, not even from Linder, who couldn't understand her anyway. Your narrative seems to be growing every time you speak. What about the folk who live here? Yule demanded, pulling his pipe from his mouth to take a quick drink. The woman gasped in phantom pain again, then shrugged helplessly before sagging in her restraints.
We were told they were just another resource. We are only working with the elves to the south, and we were given permission to just burn a few houses here and there, while dressed as you. Film it, bring it back.
Wulf, a rider from Missouri, growled in his throat and gripped his peacemaker with a rattle of his gun belt.
Fucking scum.
Yule smacked him on the leg with the back of his hand and raised an angry eyebrow at him. There was no need to act so high and mighty. Yule knew full well there was no telling what the U.S. was going to do with the locals. They only held the high ground now because someone else currently wore the mantle of bad guy. Not very kind of you to treat the locals like slave labor, Yule said, and exhaled while plucking his pipe from his teeth, dumping the coals into a little dish the inn had provided before the interrogation had begun. Did you know about the whole false flag operation?
Yes.
The woman wheezed, her face contorting as her stomach seized with ghost pain.
I just said we were just going to burn down a few homes, shuffle the elves away, and take pictures of them after we rescued them. Spread rumors of the mail riders.
You are going to be doing more than just burning houses, Yule murmured as he tapped the stack of papers sitting on the table. These came from the hand of that dead officer, and they speak about slaughtering and mutilating civilians while wearing clothes like ours. You didn't know about that.
Mutilating?
She hissed, more from pain than anger.
What are you talking about?
Yule reached over and opened the door, letting in a Veil Rider who bore 3 large ammo cans. He undid the lids and then stepped aside, letting Yule lean down and pull out what was clearly a boogaloo costume, floral print shirt included. He held the shirt up, along with a fully kitted load-bearing vest with extremely specific patches, and took a few steps towards the woman tied to the chair. I'm talking about these. My men found these hidden in ammo cans while they were taking inventory of the things we took from you after the ambush. There's these and a few standard OCP uniforms tucked away in there, and they are quite specific. You did your homework on us. You researched us. You were going to be wearing our clothing and slaughtering civilians, not just burning down a few homes for photo ops.
But...
she said, staring at the uniforms in open confusion.
I would never... Why would... I don't understand. Why would we just go around killing the elves?
Yule dragged his chair over, papers in hand, and sat down in front of the German woman, holding the missive so they were readable for her. These are the orders your officer was carrying around. They state that you and your dead friends were going to go around killing civilians while dressed as us, while one of you filmed. You were supposed to generate tons of footage in order to turn the American people against us. She said, but Yule pulled Chikily's reports from his pocket. In addition to all of this, my scouts report that Valley Elf locals have been abused while working at the base your lot is getting set up. That or being extorted for the safety of their families. Were you not aware of this? How could you not see all of this? The woman shook her head, eyes wide as she read the papers in front of her.
We were just told they were working for us and were contracted by the Southern Elves. Piper.
What's with the smoke and mirrors? Why did your command send you down a road well known for being laden with ambush points? Yule asked her harshly, tapping the stem of his pipe to the papers. To what end? Was all the extra ammunition for killing civilians? The woman gaped at both the papers and Yule, splaying out her fingers from behind her back and shaking them in a panic.
I don't know. I didn't know about any of the... I was just supposed to join the patrol as a rifleman and camera operator. I was added at the last minute.
What is the real point behind these attacks? Yule bellowed at her, pulling out his M9 and pressing the barrel against her forehead. Why would you kill innocent civilians and record it? Why would you dress in a costume as you did it? Why is the UN allowing this? Tell me, woman. The German woman closed her eyes, shrinking her head against the high back of the chair as her cheeks glistened with new, panicked tears, her voice turning into a mournful, quaking bawl.
I don't know, I swear I don't supposed to record?
Yule kept the barrel of his M9 pressed against her head, watching as she quivered in fear from the impending pull of the trigger. He twisted his face as a long trail darkened down her pant leg, dripping down onto her boots and along the seat of her chair. He watched her face, how her lips were drawn back from her clenched teeth as she choked out short sobs. Eyes squeezed shut to avoid seeing the hammer fall on the pistol. She was broken, and he neither saw nor heard a lie. Yule pressed his lips together, exhaling out his nose, then dropped his thumb, depressing the decocker on the M9. The click of the pistol made the woman cry out, pulling her feet from the ground, but she slowly blinked open her eyes, snot trickling down her nose to mix with her tears. Yule pulled the pistol away, looking at it, then pressed it back into its holster with a soft click. Take her to a room. Ask the inn if they have one with no windows. If they do, toss her in there and lock it. If she knew what was good for her. Yule looked down at the continually wincing woman, her eyes filled with constantly welling tears. She'd stay in there and not make a fuss. She needs hot water and new clothes. Chicks, see to it. Chicks frowned curtly, but nodded, crossing her arms.
Very well. I'll find some spares.
The mud and blood-crusted woman was untied from the chair, but her legs couldn't even bear to hold her weight, buckling as she tried to stand. She fell to the floor in a crumpled heap, and had to be once again lifted up by a pair of Veil Riders who dragged her up the stairs while calling for the innkeeper. Yule watched them drag her away as he took off his patrol cap and ran his fingers through his hair. If the government was working with the UN just to try and wrestle power in a party struggle, it was going to make a mess of home. The news of the Midwestern states almost being in rebellion wasn't exactly a shock to him, as there had always been hushed bar talk of balkanization or secession if the government did something backwards or in opposition to the middle of America. But the Democrats bending the knee to the UN? There had to be money changing hands. There was no way. Just no way. That woman held more information in her head. He let her rest, then play good cop here soon. Linder stepped up to Yule as the other Veil Riders stepped out of the basement room, and he reached over, lifting Yule's amulet and pressing it lightly against his neck. Heavy is the head that bears command, Linder said, nodding towards the piss-soaked chair. But I assume you learned what you were after? Yule grimaced and reached up, replacing Linder's fingers with his own. I learned nothing yet more than I wanted, if you can understand that. You'd be surprised, Linder said, inclining his head to Yule. Kings do what they believe they have to do, if it means victory. There's no king here, Yule murmured, turning to leave the room. Just a man with a new sin to eat. That woman may turn out to be more of a victim than us. Hours later, as Yule was enjoying a hot cup of tea and staring at the far wall, he heard the grumble and rumble of diesel engines approaching down the road, and he leaned back in his chair, letting out a hot breath sigh. Yethis came splashing into the front door of the inn with everyone else after they had parked, and shook her head to rid her hair of the excess rainwater that clung to it. When his NCOs came to report, Yule told them of all he was told by the prisoner, and told them to make sure the rest of the Veil Riders knew of it. Yule's mind buzzed with thoughts as he took off Yethis's hat and gave it a shake, scattering water all over Gremlin, who was happily hugging a full fuel can to her chest. Perhaps he had been too hasty in not taking more prisoners. Next time, he'll tell his Veil Riders to try and keep maybe one or two alive on purpose, instead of lucking out and just winging one. The trucks brought in from the ambush were just parked along the road and left there, as no one in the city knew how to turn them on, let alone drive and operate one. The dwarves that walked by in their traveling cloaks showed an immense interest in the trucks, playing with the wheels and doors, and were able to wrestle a Veil Rider out of the inn to show them the engine. After a few minutes, it was like an entire clan of the stout fellows had popped out of the ground, and were scouring the trucks and taking notes in their little paper pads, or taking measurements of certain spaces in the engine. Yule just watched from the door with another hot cup of tea in his hand, smiling at them as the steam filtered up through the air. The night passed with little else of note, besides the Veil Riders drinking and cheering themselves into a stupor while telling the locals how the ambush went. Some Veil Riders took the initiative to actually start learning the local language, so bits and pieces were very slowly translated to those who drank around or with the Veil Riders, while other times a lot of pantomiming was used instead. If the Veil Riders ever went back home and got involved in a game of charades, they would be unbeatable by even the most seasoned of players. The next morning, Chikily arrived with a cluster of harpies that were whole heads taller than him, a mixture of males and females that all had a kind of primal grimness to their faces. Unlike Chikily's smaller and more lithe body type, these harpies looked as if someone had taken condors or great eagles and spliced them together with a human. Their arms were thicker, their chests broader, and their eyes burning with an intelligence that made Yule a bit nervous.
Chikily asked Himalayas to help. They agree in exchange for goods.
Chikily said proudly, resting his hands on his hips. Yule looked down at Chikily, then to the stalwart leader of this little band, a female with multicolored hair that was speckled with spots of black, white, and reds that reminded him a lot of Flecktarn. "What do you mean, goods?" Yule asked him, looking down at the sparrow harpy while pressing the amulet to his temple. The leader of the harpies strode forward, her long black talons clacking on the ground as she stepped. Chikily bowed his head slightly and stepped back, standing beside Yule now. She was far, far bigger than Chikily, but still shorter than Yule, her nose coming up to around the middle of his clavicle. Her voice was harsh, yet oddly feminine and regal, and she locked her eyes on Yule's with no fear.
"Yes, we wish to exchange services for Veil Rider wares. You have fine clothes, lightweight, won't weigh us down in flight. You also have fancy tools we could use."
Yule noticed that, unlike Chikily, these harpies had far thicker talons than the other ones he had seen, and their wings had a single digit, sporting a thick, dagger-like wing claw that looked as sharp as steel. "Tools, you say?"
"Yes, those little thunder sticks you sometimes use. We Himalaya believe they could be of use to us. If you trade us a thunder stick for us to play with, and maybe make us some clothes, Himalaya will happily help you and your squires."
The harpy said, stepping around Yule slowly and observing him, her wing claws on her hips in a haughty, judging fashion. Yule looked down at this little harpy warrioress with a mixture of curiosity and acknowledgement. He gingerly handed his tin cup of tea to Chikily and dusted his hands off on his pants before holding out his hand. "Well, tell me your name so I know what to call you, and I think we can work out a deal here." The harpy stalked forward smoothly, bending her head down to brush her face against Yule's hand and pin it against her cheek with her wing claw. She smiled softly as she leaned back up, her large pointed fangs glinting in the morning sun as her eyes studied him, her color-speckled hair falling prettily over her face.
"Savarus,"
she whispered, and she fixed Yule with another kind of predatory stare.
"Queen of Himalaya."
With the light on her eyes, Yule saw that they were not the brown color he thought they were at first, but a deep, murky merlot, and the color reminded him of old blood and rotting meat. Chikily made a nervous sound next to Yule and hunched his shoulders a little in fear, tea spilling over the rim of the cup and spattering onto the cobblestones below. The meeting ended quickly, after a few more details were hashed out, that is. When they were done, and Yule safely getting his hand back in one piece, the Himalayas flapped off to grab some gear they needed from their roost. When the coast was clear, Yule spun around, scooped up Chikily while flinging the contents of his tin cup into a nearby bush, and stepped off at a run to get as far away from that harpy woman as possible. Did you see her fucking teeth? Yule panted at Chikily, looking over his shoulder to see she was, in fact, watching him while hanging in the air in a kind of backward flying hover.
She makes Chikily seem like hatchling, her claws like tiny swords.
Chikily shouted as he craned his neck to look over Yule's shoulder, and his eyes widened as he too saw that she was watching them run. Yule skittered around a corner and saw the trucks in the distance down the road, and waved his hand to the Veil Riders that were loitering outside and smoking. Chikily, let me tell you, next time you find some harpies to help us, could you find less scary ones?
Chikily agrees.
Chikily cried back, wondering to himself just what the hell he had been thinking going to the Queen in the first place. And that is the end of Chapter 7 of the Book 1 Mk.II redo. If you like these stories and others like them, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel of Garbro's Field Desk. Join the Discord, join us on YouTube, join me on X. Become a member on the Coffee and gain secret Discord channels. You can see where the whips of art are being done in progress, or future voice actor lines, the little sneaky peeky things that most other folks don't get to see until it's fully finished. And on Coffee, there are 3 levels. There's a $5 Stuffy Squad, the $25 E4 Mafia, and the first shirt for $50. And they all get teasers at different links. First shirts get a whole page, E4s get a paragraph, and a Stuffy Squad get a few sentences. Sorry, that's a weird burp. Get a few sentences. Sentences. Can I not talk right? I swear, there are days where I just can't do it. But also, I say the names of all those in the coffee. So let's go ahead and get to that real quick. For our first shirts, we have E Machino, Cody Jero, Death Dancer, Insane Medic, and now Allspark 113. He has joined the first shirts. Then there's our E4 Mafia. That's the Great Baguette. Great Baguette. I cannot say Baguette. The Great Baguette, Sonic Arrow, Splug the Goblin, Darkside, Kiwi Bastard, Lacune 8, Lacune, Josh Beatty, Matty Boy, and Crusader 0625. And then there's a there's more of you. And then there's a speed round of Stuffy Squad. Split Iris Bear, Super Stink 64, Elderock, Chromin, Dalek, Jules, Blonde Lore, Thrace Vega, Devishon, Holt, Andrew N, Gale, Yeti Potato, Skelters, Kite Zero, Classic Cthulhu, Ranger Uninspired, Diesel Dog, Coffee Commander, Anto, Inquisitor Matt, Duncan D, and Ein, the Loresmith. And there's any more you coming in there. I'm gonna run out of breath here soon. Oh my lord. And until we see you next time on this side of the veil in my rambling ass fucking outros, that was Rue, that was Hailey, that was Simba, that was Meowsy, our new German voice actor, that was Technoward, that was Elida, oh my god, that was Eliza, my friend and fellow VTuber, as well as Fran, our proofreader, and this is Garbro's Field Desk. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.